Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start the meeting now. So I'd like to welcome everyone and thank everyone for joining us tonight for our live stream of the elected member briefing meeting. Just before we get into the meeting proper, I just want to confirm that this is our first live streaming of a council meeting, or in this case, an elected member briefing session. And we're excited to provide yet another opportunity or avenue for our community to engage with the work that the City of Whyalla does within our city. Before we begin, I'd just like to go through a couple of matters in relation to tonight's meeting. By joining us tonight using Microsoft Teams, you are our guests, and you will be and you will see this next to your name, or if you're a participant or presenter, that will be reflected against your name. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, and by remaining online, you acknowledge that you are aware of and accept that this is a condition of connecting to this meeting. We will mirror these the normal meeting procedures throughout tonight's virtual meeting. Therefore, when Council does move into the confidential portion of tonight's meeting, any guests or external parties will be asked to leave the meeting prior to the confidential session commencing. Council's administration will also assist guests to exit the meeting at that time or if and when required. As per the local government meeting regulations, members of the gallery are not able to speak at a council meeting, nor in an elected member briefing of this nature. So any external parties, unless they've been provided presenting access, will have cameras and microphones disabled. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for our first live stream meeting. And we ask for everyone's patience tonight as we work through any initial technical challenges that may arise during the course of this meeting. So with that little introduction, I'd like to formally acknowledge that tonight we're meeting on the traditional lands of the traditional owners, the Bungala people, and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Also want to remind both councillors and any gallery online that tonight is not a formal council meeting, so tonight is not a forum for making formal decisions. It is an elected member briefing where we're able to share informally information and present information to councillors and have a discussion on matters that may come to council at a later stage. Having got through some of that preamble, we've got 4 items on tonight's agenda, which we'll work through progressively. The first item that we'll be talking about is in relation to aged care, and we have Helping Hands Chief Executive Officer and a couple of staff from Helping Hands. So I'd like to hand over to Mr. Chris Stewart to share his screen and talk to us about Helping Hands service delivery of aged care services in our city. So over to you, Chris.
Someone to unmute me. There we go. Thank you very much. Well, look, thank you very much for having me, Justin, and all of the councillors. Mayor, thank you for having us here tonight to present to all of you about what Helping Hand is doing in the aged care space. I have 2 colleagues with me tonight. We weren't quite sure how the format was going to be, but I'm joined by Rob Hinges, who is our Executive Manager for Kindred Living. Rob's on a 6-month secondment, and he is living 4 days a week in Whyalla. And we have some other staff members up there, but I'll get to that shortly. Also Samantha Georgetsis, who's our Executive Manager for Marketing and Customer Experience, and has a big role to play in all of the consumer engagement. So she is also online with us. And both Rob and Sam will be available to answer any questions that you have at the end of the presentation. I would like to be able to deliver the presentation and then perhaps talk about questions, because I do think that you'll have some questions which we've tried to answer in the presentation. So if you could just hold the questions until we get through, I'd be appreciative. So let me just share my screen here.
Just whilst you're doing that, Chris, just letting you know that we have all of our mayor and all of our councillors online, as well as all of our executive team, plus a few other key staff from council, just for, you won't recognise names and faces necessarily, but that's just who the primary audience is for tonight's presentation, and then a few members from the public.
Okay, fantastic. Now, can you see the presentation? Yep, good. Okay, fantastic. All right, so I've done the introductions. So what I'd like to do now is also pay our respects to the elders past and present. We meet on Kaurna land here in Adelaide, but also wish to acknowledge that we are on the Bangala people's land and pay our respects to those elders also, and appreciate their rich cultural heritage and spiritual connection. Tonight I'd like to touch a little bit about Helping Hand, very briefly highlight some of the sector challenges that we're facing, and then touch on the management agreement that we've entered into with Kindred Living, give a little bit of an update of where we're going and our way forward. But we will move through this fairly quickly. So just an overview on Helping Hand. Our strategic plan is here. I won't go into the details on this just yet.
Just confirming, Chris, your slideshow's not
it's not showing
through. It's not showing, so I'm not sure if you do view PowerPoint from your end, whether that changes anything, but it's still on the first screen.
Is that right? Okay. Hang on a second.
That's it. Yep.
You can see the whole presentation now?
I can see another slides. Yep. You
can see a strategic plan slide, and now can you see an About Us slide, Justin?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
All good. Thank you.
All right, let's go with that. My apologies, everybody. We ran 4 Zoom sessions last week for families. You'd think I could have got it right, but here we are. Okay, so About Us. Helping Hand, it's a substantial organisation. I think most importantly, I wanted to emphasise to everyone that we are a not-for-profit organisation. We're part of the Uniting Church network. We have entered into this arrangement with Kindred Living because it's part of our mission to deliver services to areas where many others don't wish to go. So this is for us a mission-based exercise and very much in line with our values and commitment to regional South Australia. We've been involved in aged care in South Australia for almost 70 years. We have an independent and skills-based board, and circa 110, so we're up to $120 million now turnover. We have quite a big regional footprint that has aged care homes in Clare, Jamestown, Port Pirie, and home care services that stretch throughout the entire Eyre Peninsula, upper mid-north, and down through the Clare Valley into York Peninsula. We then have 6 aged care homes in metropolitan Adelaide, and a very large home care business where the number of home care packages we offer now is almost as many residential aged care beds. We do have a history in the regions of engaging with local community homes like Kindred Living that were owned and operated by the community. In Port Pirie, we were gifted the aged care homes in 1995, Corinna in the Clare Valley since 2002, and then Jamestown since 2004. We have put significant capital investment into all of these homes over the last, since we took ownership of them, to ensure they maintain up to contemporary standards and are still very well used by the community with strong interface with the local hospital and communities. So we have a history of doing this. Haven't done one, obviously, for about 15 years or 17 years, but we're very excited about the opportunity with Kindred. Our management structure, myself reporting to a board, and I have 6 executives, and the executive manager of home care services, Rob Heinges, has been seconded over to Whyalla, as I mentioned. And we have a very big workforce in regional South Australia, over 342 employees across the regions. and there's about 270 employees in Kindred Living. So as you can see, we're a substantial employer of people in the regions. Some of the challenges that you would have heard facing, and probably what drove the decision for Kindred or the Kindred board to exit the business, going through enormous change. The Royal Commission and the increased consumer expectations around aged care have made this in some cases, an unviable space to small operators. And so we are seeing, especially on the East Coast, a lot of aged care operators, smaller ones, either leaving or selling to larger, more professional or larger scale organisations like ourselves. So we do think that this trend of consolidation will continue. I won't go into this, we don't have time, but there's some data that just shows the incredibly high demand for aged care services, particularly in home care, and some of the big challenges, particularly around, as we know, workforce. And I won't touch on that one either. I guess one of the benefits that we've been able to bring to Kindred Living already is some of our processes and procedures around preparedness for COVID. So we've been in helping hand in Metropolitan. We've been hit very, very hard by COVID. One of our homes has quite severe outbreaks, which we're working through. But the majority of them, even as exposure sites, we've been able to get a handle on quite quickly. We moved quite assertively in Whyalla. Because they are single point service aged care homes, we took quite a conservative position. There were cases circulating in the community. So we took the decision to move those homes to a status which we call orange and operated under a partners in care model. So we haven't locked the homes down, but we've certainly restricted visitors. And so far we have, I think, 30 families that are participating in a partners in care model where they're taught about infection control and then coming to continue to deliver care to their loved ones. So it's quite an innovative program and one that's worked really well so far in Whyalla, and we've had great support from the local community. We've had a very good relationship so far with the hospital. They've helped us with some RAT kits. They've helped us with some testing and screening. So we're really pleased that relationship has taken off under this extraordinary environment. I won't touch on this either. And I think the main thing you're obviously interested in, how are things going with Kindred Living? What is this arrangement that Helping Hand have entered into? So on the 30th of November, we entered into a management agreement. We had quite extensive discussions with Kindred board leading up to that point. And it was in quite a stressed financial situation. And it had had severe regulatory intervention from the Aged Care Safety and Quality Commission. It had trouble stabilising its workforce, and those things are very expensive and difficult to dig your way out of. So we negotiated with the federal government to develop a package of sorts that would allow us to come in and help manage the facilities and the home care business and the retirement living and bring it back onto a stable footing. It was a 12-month agreement, and Helping Hand has been delegated full management responsibility. We still report to their board, but that board has been reduced in size, and so we have quite a nimble now relationship with them, and really we report to them on a monthly basis, but all decision making is in the responsibility of Helping Hand. The intent is to stabilise the organisation, to get it onto a better financial footing, a much better standard of clinical care delivery for the residents and the clients, and to stabilise the workforce through clear leadership. The mutual intent, and in fact we've signed an agreement, the mutual intent is that within 12 months we have an option that we trigger that will then enable the full integration and merger of Kindred Living into Helping Hand. That means we inherit all of the assets, which is the buildings and all the residential aged care licenses, but we also inherit all of the liabilities, which are significant. So this is paying out the room accommodation deposits, all the employee liabilities, and any future obligations to maintain and develop the facilities. So we think it's a good model that allows us to stabilise the service and then once everyone's satisfied with how everything's going, then we can look to integrate. We've had very good will from the community so far. I must say that we've had good feedback. We have established a good leadership structure which is engaging well with staff, and we have been able to stabilise that immediate leadership team, particularly in the residential care homes. Annie Lockwood, that decision was made to close Annie Lockwood and move those residents into the other two homes, and is now being used indirectly by the community. SA Health have got students and nurses living in Annie Lockwood who are providing services to the community. We've also used one of the cottages to provide accommodation for Kindred Living nursing staff and care staff whom have had to travel from either metropolitan Adelaide or in some cases interstate. So that facility is almost at capacity. It's generating some tremendous benefits, both in terms of some cash flow to support Kindred as an operating entity, but also to provide workforce. There is a huge demand for services. There is a wait list for residential. Both homes are at 100% occupancy, and there's a 300 wait list on home care packages. At this stage, they're difficult to meet simply due to workforce. There was a visit from the Commission to Yultana the week before we commenced. That visit did not go well, and we inherited some quite problematic compliance findings. We have stepped into, again, I was able to talk to the Commission, explain the arrangement that we were under, and now we've got a very, very clear process for improvement, which they're very happy with, and we started making some significant ground into that to restabilise and reset all the clinical care in Yultana, and I'm pleased with how that's going. We have a detailed project plan, so we have a project manager in place, and this is just an overview of phasing of the project. We are currently now in the stage where we're setting up the new business as usual operating protocols, which means stabilising the roster, ensuring there's strong, robust processes and systems in place particularly around risk management, clinical care. And so that's our focus over the next 2 and a bit months. And then we'll start preparing for the full integration, assuming everything goes well. This is the management structure that we have in place. The green boxes are helping hand people. Rob is the leader and is doing an exceptional job in leading this organisation through what's been quite a volatile period. Darren Button is our project manager. And then we have Donna Cowan, who is maybe well known to you. She used to be the manager of Clare Hospital. She went overseas for a few years and actually worked in COVID positive aged care homes. So her skills and resources has been absolutely invaluable, both to Helping Hand, but she is dedicated to Kindred Living. As I said, Rob stays 4 days a week, Darren's 3 days a week, and Donna is 3 days a week also. And then we have stabilised this management structure, as I mentioned. I think I've covered our 3-month priorities already, so I won't dwell on that. But just to highlight, our focus is on building up a very strong, accountable team culture, focusing on clinical care so that we don't have any more non-compliances from the Commission, and most importantly, or as importantly, should I say, ensuring financial sustainability so that aged care services can continue to be delivered into Whyalla and the surrounding regions for decades to come. That's our commitment. Annie Lockwood is very difficult to reopen, and so we are looking at how we can repurpose that. It's simply not set up for contemporary aged care delivery, and I am so glad that it's not operating at the moment in the current circumstances, because taking one look at it, it would be very difficult to control from a COVID perspective, and I think it could have been quite catastrophic if it was operating at this stage. But we think Copper House Court has to be updated to fix up all of those bathrooms, and Yultana, we're looking at removing again those shared bathrooms and double rooms and single rooms that have no en-suites. In this environment, people not being able to quarantine in their own room or have their own space is not contemporary aged care, and it's also an infection control. So we're in the process of building up a detailed capital works consideration, which will be circa $12 to $15 million to conduct those works, and also add additional capacity to Yultana, because we know that the current 98 beds is probably not enough for the whole of Whyalla in the future. So we're looking to increase capacity as well, but we need some further work on that. So that's our focus, is to assemble a package that we can take to federal government. So that's our presentation. We're delighted to be here and are very happy to take back any questions. I'll stop sharing the screen now.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Chris. I'll get councillors, if they've got questions, to use their hand to flag that they've got a question or comment, and I'll start with Mayor McLaughlin first. You just need to unmute yourself, Mayor.
Apologies. Thank you, Chris, for that presentation. It was fantastic and very concise. You talk about the challenges with workforce numbers. What are you looking to do to increase the level of workforce so that you can therefore deliver a greater number of services in the Whyalla community?
Yeah, that would be one of the biggest challenges, Mayor. What we are doing is partnering with, well, we already have a partnership with the university, and I had planned on meeting them today actually as a precursor to this meeting, but obviously that didn't happen because I'm here in Adelaide. But that's something that we think has a lot of potential, and building those student pathways. I've had some preliminary discussions, but we see that as a really great opportunity, giving them placements in the aged care sector, and then allows us to lock them in. What we're also seeing, curiously, in Adelaide is that we have had more applications for nurses than what we've had in the last 2 years. Nurses are getting sick of doing vaccinations, and they're getting sick of standing in the heat doing tests. So curiously enough, we're having a whole, well, not a whole influx, but we're having a lot more interest from nurses. So I think that as COVID starts to come off and we settle back in, touch wood, pray that happens, we might see a resurgence in the workforce as some of those people come out of that COVID environment back into their mainstream professions.
If any other councillors got any questions, just whilst I'm waiting for a hand to show, I'll just ask a question. You mentioned that both existing facilities are 100% full, and I think it was 98 beds that you've got in total.
Yep.
For a population of the size of Whyalla and given its location,
Yep.
have you got any view as to what the required bed numbers are for a city of our size, and consequently, you know, what the gap might be between what we've got at present and what we could/should have going forward?
Yeah, so not exactly yet, Justin. I think we know that there's we've got demographic data that give an indication. But one of the trends that the government is really pushing hard is to keep people in their own homes longer, because residential aged care is expensive, and it's, you know, it's becoming very much last resort. The average length of stay now in residential aged care is less than 3 years. So people are going in at end of life, multiple morbidities, highly complex needs with advanced dementia. That's the sort of cohort that we're seeing, whereas in previous periods it wasn't as demanding. So we think that if we can design the right homes and probably add another, I'm thinking probably another 12 to 18 beds. But again, depending on the footprint and the layout and the design of the home to make sure it can be efficiently serviced. But yeah, it's a bit hard to tell at this stage. It's in what they call priority 3, which means there's sufficient capacity at the moment. But with losing Annie Lockwood, it's probably getting to that pressure point. So that's why we're going to look now, how do we flex up, or how do we increase the numbers in Yultana?
Yep. I'll go next to David, followed by Soto, and then Steve. So David Knox.
Okay, my question's about home care packages. Given that not going to get a lot of new bricks and mortar, given baby boomers, there's going to be a huge expansion in the need for home care packages. What mechanisms do you have in place to recruit those quite a number of additional people so you can service that waiting list?
Yeah, that's the big question, David. And I would just refer back to what I said to Mayor McLaughlin in terms of, we've got to bring them from, we can't just go and recruit them. We have to build them from within, new pathways, new collaborations, and that's simply how we'll have to do it. We are hoping, obviously, that with the borders lifting, we might start to get more immigration happening, and that's obviously a key part of aged care as well. So we have some organic strategies, but then we're going to rely on an external workforce also. The other point I would just make in regard to bricks and mortar, you're quite right, and the government recently announced that they're not issuing any more licenses. All right, so for residential, so the package will go into that person's hands, and they'll try and stay at home as long as they possibly can.
Yep.
Okay, Soto, our Councillor Stupos next.
How you going, Chris?
Hi, Soto.
You mentioned a couple of critical points that are coming up. The CHC reaccreditation is due at the end of January.
Correct.
How are you going to go with that, mate, given the hassles that the organisation's had in the past?
Yeah. So Copper House, I think, is quite stable at the moment. They also had a visit from the Commission just before we took over, and they got a good report. No issues. Got a good, stable RSM there, a site manager, Lourdes, who's done a terrific job. But we are preparing for it now. The Commission is behind on all their reaccreditations. So even though it's due in January, they might not come out for several months. But we've been preparing thoroughly for that. And Donna has been using our helping hand systems and processes to ensure that we got maximum chance of getting that accreditation over the line.
Thanks. The other question was, we're heading towards both a state and a federal election this financial year.
Yep.
Is there anything that this council can do to try and support getting increasing funding either from the feds or the states, given the current state of the aged care facilities in this country?
Yeah, I would certainly appreciate the support from the council. And it is a federal issue, we know that. But I also know, and I've had some great discussions with Justin and Mayor McLaughlin, as well as Eddie Hughes, local member there, who you all know really well, and just emphasised that we need to put some serious money into these care homes to ensure they're viable for the decades to come. Had discussions with Rowan. So I guess once I start to put together our pre-election submission, which I'm in the process of doing now with a specialist firm, I'll be having another conversation with Justin, and just to make sure we are aligned and that we have your support, because it's going to be tremendously important that we're all, swimming in the same lane, so to speak.
We're in good hands.
Yeah. Thank you. Really good questions, Councillor. I'll go to Steve Harrison next, who, for your benefit, Chris, is our Chief Economic Advisor.
Okay, Chris.
Hi.
I'm really interested in your student pathways. Is that across all allied health services, or physios, OTs, the whole gambit? And is that an industry that Whyalla could grow and become a centre for, and that maybe even the repurposing of the Annie Lockwood site, is that something that we could take advantage of and provide accommodation for people to actually move here and become students and get involved in the whole aged care sector as part of their training?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely what we'd like to be able to get to, Steve. So it's allied health is a key part of that, and I know the university does a bit of allied health work already, which I've learned about. But it's also the care workers. I need to understand a little bit more what the TAFE there offers in terms of the care worker profession, because that's going to that will become a profession in its own right. So Helping Hand's got great experience in building student pathways with all of the universities. We've got a long history of it, and I know there's some nice relationships that exist there already, and some good work that's already been done in Whyalla and with the University of South Australia there. So yeah, I think it's something that we can work on over the coming period.
All right, thank you for that. Just one last call out to councillors. Any other questions for Chris? Because if not, I'm going to say thank you very much, Chris, and to both Samantha and Rob also being online. I think Helping Hands is going to be a very welcomed and good addition to our city. And certainly the conversations I've had to date with yourself, Chris, has been very productive, and I think good relationships already starting to form in terms of trying to collaborate to get that influence with the purse holders, particularly the federal government, in terms of some additional funds. So thank you for your presentation tonight. I'm sure this will not be the last opportunity to speak with you. I'm sure the councillors would like to get an update maybe 3 or 6 months down the track, depending on how quickly you or Helping Hands gets up and running. So thank you very much again, and appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you very much, Justin. Thank you, Mayor McLaughlin. Thank you, councillors. And we're very happy to have another engagement at your convenience.
Yep. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Now, Chris and co, you're very welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting, but if you've got other things to do with your time, we won't be offended if you want to leave this meeting. We're going to go from aged care to fish farming, and I'm now going to hand over to Kristen Clark, our Director of Infrastructure, to provide councillors with an update regarding Clean Seas and talk to the briefing note that was provided as an attachment to the agenda. So I'll hand over to you, Kristen.
Thanks, Justin. We met with Clean Seas last week. We've been meeting with them as required. It's probably been every 3 or 4 weeks. In talking to Clean Seas last week, probably the largest item that came out from them is that they are starting to see some of the problems associated with doing some of their building works at the Point Lowly Marina, given the hard rock that they're encountering there. So they have indicated verbally at this stage, and they've been asked to put it in writing, that they are no longer looking to use the Point Lowly Marina for their larger vessels. Instead, they hope to be able to do most of their work out of the landing and also from Port Pirie. Having said that, they will continue to use Point Lowly for trailable size boats, and in support of that, and also as a show of good faith to the Whyalla community, they're looking to underpin both boat ramps at Point Lowly and also remove some of the rock debris that has fallen in there. So they're in the process of gaining approvals for that work. Outside of that, there has been a brief discussion paper that's been circulated, and I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, councillors, any show of hands, anyone who's got a question for Kristen? I'll start with Councillor Knox and then followed by Councillor Stupos.
Just in relation to the landing and the placement of the obstacles they've put there, are they impeding access to the road or just impeding access to the landing?
So the obstacles that they had there was just impeding access to the landing. So effectively it was off the Santos emergency track that runs north-south, but it was preventing people from entering the larger car park there at the landing. I spoke to Clean Seas, I think it was just over a week ago when that sort of first came to our attention, and Clean Seas were down there with the crane the next day to remove them.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just get you to add to that, Kristen, what the plans might be going forward in terms of any restrictions placed?
Certainly. So at this stage, it's my view that the landing is a part of the road network, and because they're operating on a public road, they would need to have a traffic management plan that would talk to how they would manage traffic in that area, understanding that they have a shared responsibility. They don't have exclusive use to that area, and that does cause Clean Seas some operational issues. But to get around that, they will need a traffic management plan. They will need appropriately trained staff, and they will also need approval to temporarily close off that area when they are working. It is a difficult one in that if they are doing crane work or some other heavy type activities, they do need to be able to have exclusive access. But it's my understanding that the nature of their lease or their license is that they don't have exclusivity. So they do need to be able to work with the public in that area. And Clean Seas have acknowledged all of that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'll go to Councillor Stupos now, and then followed by Mayor Claire McLaughlin.
Thanks, Justin. I really feel sorry for Clean Seas. They're being bashed from pillar to post on both social media and some of the idiots at Point Lowly who absolutely dead against them. But there is a good news story that's just come out that they are still prepared to spend that $250,000 to upgrade the current launch area. Can we get some positive news out there to try and silence the disbelievers?
It is something that we could look to do. I would say that it is still early stages at the moment around the works that they're doing at Point Lowly, but once we have an agreement in principle about the works and we have all of the approvals in place, coastal protection may also be involved. Once we've got that all tidied up, we could look to do a Facebook post about the positive work that's happening there.
Thanks.
And again, just before going to the Mayor, Kristen, can you also just add, so it's not lost, the amount of local spend and local employment that shouldn't be missed as well?
Certainly. So Clean Seas currently have 20 people employed at the Whyalla operations. They have a further 5 people going through the recruitment process that they should have on board shortly. And there's another 2 people or 2 roles that are being advertised. So they are looking to grow their numbers to close to 30 employees. And in terms of economic spend, they are spending approximately $250,000 a month for their operations here in Whyalla, and the majority of that they are targeting local businesses to be providing those services.
Okay, I'll just get you to turn your hand off, Councillor Stupos, and I'll go to Mayor McLaughlin now.
Thank you for that, Justin. I guess all that information is very, very important, and it's really good to get an update to this meeting. I guess my further ask is that we ask Clean Seas to have regular conversations directly with the community. I think that is extremely beneficial. Often there is frustration from members of the community who don't feel like they're being listened to, perhaps, or they have information to discuss with council or directly with Clean Seas. So I think to alleviate frustrations and to have that open conversation ongoing, I think it's really key that we ask of Clean Seas to have regular ongoing community discussions with members of Whyalla who have questions or those who may be impacted potentially. So I think that's really important that we follow that up with Clean Seas and ensure that the community have that direct conversation with Clean Seas moving forward.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. And yes, we've already started that or made that request of Clean Seas. I'll go to Councillor Simpson, followed by Councillor Stone. So over to you, Councillor Simpson.
Just in line with what Councillor Stupos was talking about, have we had any reports back about the alleged escapees that they sent a sample off to?
So in talking to Clean Seas last week, they don't have any indicators suggesting that they have lost any fish. They are required to report to PIRSA, and PIRSA does do an audit of their practices, and everything there is up to date. There has been some video footage of Kingfish in the Fitzgerald Bay area. Clean Seas' response to that was that visually it looked like those fish were between 1.5 and 4.5 kilos in size. And at the moment, all of the fish that Clean Seas have in the pens are much, much smaller than that. So the large school that was seen, they do not, they couldn't possibly be escapees given their size.
Yeah, thank you for that. I did read that. I was more concerned about the one fish that was on social media.
Sure, I did refer to that one. Unfortunately, we don't have the fish as an example. If we had the fish and got it to PIRSA or to Clean Seas, then we may well have been able to do some DNA tests to see if it was an escapee. But at this stage, that's the only example we have, and I think that's been dealt with separately.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Stone.
Yeah, just a quick one, Kristen. Did we ever determine where the supposed smell of either sewage or septic was coming from, whether it was from the seaside or on land?
We haven't yet. Just to note that there is a septic smell that is being reported out there, and there are probably 6 or 8 shacks in the same area that are all running off of septics. We haven't been able to determine if the smell is coming from the shore or the sea. Clean Seas have said that they will contact the person who's made the observation, and if they're able to contact Clean Seas on the day that the smell is present, then Clean Seas are happy to attend and try to get to the bottom of it. Clean Seas did say that one of the changes in practices that they have had from last time, I think they've acknowledged that last time the cleaning of the nets did produce a septic-like smell. When they clean the nets now, they do it on a weekly basis, which means that all of the material coming off the nets is alive, and because it's alive, it doesn't have the smell that's normally that's been associated in the past. So they don't believe that the material that they have at the moment is causing any kind of smell.
Thanks.
And I guess that's the importance of reporting these things in real time. Clean Seas are out there most days, and they continue to be open to anyone making observations on the day and investigating the cause.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Santuzzi next. You'll need to unmute, Councillor. Yep.
So given that you're saying that they clean the nets weekly, are they doing that in the water or up on the shore?
They're doing that in the water. It sounds like it's high pressure cleaning on the water is their new practice.
No, I remember that saying that originally, and I was just making sure.
Councillor Knox, back to you.
The cleaning of the nets, when they spoke to us in the past, they were going to take the nets back down to Arno Bay to clean. So this is a change in their work practices. So I just mentioned that. Perhaps they should have conveyed that to us earlier on too.
My recollection was that they were only going to take the nets to Arno Bay periodically, and periodically might be every 6 months, just whereas the rest of the cleaning is done in situ on water on a much regular basis. So I think the taking of the nets was by exception and only periodically. Councillor Santuzzi, have you got another question, or you just haven't turned your hand off?
I haven't turned it off. Sorry about that. I thought I had.
No, all good. No dramas. Does any other councillors have any other questions or comments regarding Clean Seas? Okay, if not, we'll move then on to the next item, which is around COVID-19. We're going to provide basically a bit of an update in terms of all things COVID from a council service delivery perspective, and just share some of the intel that we've got. We also plan to provide some sufficient time for councillors to ask any questions they may have around COVID and the implications for our service delivery. And we also want to talk about whether council wishes to consider any financial support to either businesses or community members in response to the current COVID situation, given some of the previous concerns about the financial impact. In this instance, I'm going to hand over to Kathy in the first instance, and then we'll also hear from Sue King. So Kathy, can I get you to speak to this item first, please?
Yes, thank you, Justin. Needless to say that as an organisation, we have over the last number of weeks been ensuring that we have a COVID-friendly environment for staff to be working in, and also ensuring that we continue to deliver services out into the community. I'm not going to go into any detail on that, but I will hand over to Sue King shortly. Secondly, we do wish to also talk about and revisit Council's COVID relief policy that it had during 2020. And for that part of this item, I will hand over to Grant Jennings. But at the minute, over to Sue for an update. As you recall, Sue is our Manager of People and Culture, and Sue has been leading our COVID response management team. We have a small team in place, which includes the Executive Management Group, Sue King, Irene Adair as our Manager Governance from a risk perspective, and Sean Kelly from a communications point of view. But over to you now, King. Sue, can I ask you to kick this one off from here, please?
Thanks, Kathy. Just by way of update, we have, as Council may be aware, been out to consult on vaccination policy. We received significant feedback from staff and the relevant two union associations, which is the AWU and ASU, on our vaccination policy. We've now embedded that into our operations. We had moved from a mandated position to a strongly recommended position, with the ability for council at any point in time to change its position. And we would use a significant risk matrix that we had developed throughout consultation and ahead of making a decision on a mandated vaccination or vaccination policy. We've communicated with our staff that it is strongly recommended, and we are tracking our vaccination rate of staff, and we currently have 88% of our workforce who are vaccinated. Some people we are unaware of at this point in time purely because they haven't come forward and they are on leave. Managers are currently following up with those staff, to understand, do they intend to become vaccinated? And if there are any barriers to those staff being vaccinated, and how we might be able to work with them and what support they might need. And B, if they are already vaccinated, for them to please provide us a copy of their vaccination certificate. We're not keeping any other records on file. We're not keeping any other health information, and we're not keeping copies of vaccination certificates. We're purely using a cite and record system to be able to track where staff are at in terms of their vaccination. As we would see, Whyalla is steadily increasing in the number of COVID cases that we're having. Yesterday we reported 140. That's an increase from last week of 21. We are tracking that via a intranet page, so all staff have access to the changes not only in Whyalla but across the state around COVID cases. We have been managing a couple of close contacts within council. We have also implemented our business continuity plan, and our business continuity plan is about how we are managing our workforce in the event of an outbreak, that we can still provide those services to community with limited to no disruption where possible. So we've continued to do that, and we are working really closely with our staff in terms of not closing office spaces, but rather working to a blended model or a hybrid model of staff working between site and home. We have also been readily communicating with staff around the changes to PCR testing and rapid antigen testing. The state government has issued its directives that rapid antigen testing now is the preferred method for anyone who is considered a close contact, and they are distributed via distribution hubs. Whyalla does not have a distribution hub at this stage, so anyone who is deemed a close contact, for our staff, they are eligible to have a PCR test through the Whyalla Hospital. So we are managing that, and we are also working quite closely with Flinders and Upper North Health around what a distribution centre might look like, and we have got a connection at the Flinders and Upper North Health Network to talk more about what that will look like, not only for the community, but what role council may or may not play in that.
Okay,
So I'm not sure if there's any questions.
Yes, any questions from members in terms of our COVID response and our preparation and the I guess the precautions and the strategies that we've put in place to ensure continued service out through to the community and also the safety of our staff? No? Okay. Thanks very much for that update, Sue. Members, will keep you posted in terms of any developments, you know, if they go towards anything there. Sorry, Councillor Marshall. Yep.
Thank you. Yes, Sue, thanks for that. I'm just wondering, what are the leave implications for if someone contracts COVID and there is, you know, it's not as mild as, and there are some longer term consequences? Are there differences between statuses of vaccinated and unvaccinated as far as leave entitlements?
No, councillor, we have not separated vaccinated versus unvaccinated. So our COVID leave management plan still exists, which means that staff can access up to 15 days of COVID leave. What we have identified so far is those staff. We have had a staff member who has contracted. It's been mild and they've been able to work from home with the exception of 1 or 2 days. So where that's possible, that's what we're encouraging. But if staff certainly can't work from home, then they do have access to 15 days COVID leave. The SA Health advice suggests that people would probably need not 15 days, maybe 10 at the most, and that's 10 calendar days, whereas our COVID leave is 15 working days. They may not need it, but it certainly is there if they do need it. If COVID is deemed to have been contracted within the workplace, there are other mechanisms through an application through injury management for a work cover claim, which would be considered along with any other claim that may come in. But we have had advice that it is compensable if it is deemed to have been contracted in the workplace.
So even though that person may be have not taken precautions, they still would be eligible for a work cover claim.
That's what we're advised at this point in time, but every work cover claim is subject to an approval process. I think the first claim that goes through will be the test claim for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Justin, mute. You need to unmute.
Yep, sorry. Just before we move on to the potential COVID relief, it might be worth just providing a bit of an update in terms of what we know in terms of our community's vulnerabilities around COVID. Like we know the number of cases, but Mayor, did you want to touch on the Whyalla Leadership Group discussion, key agencies from last week?
Sure. So we've been meeting regularly with other key agencies, obviously the Whyalla Hospital, SA Police, and supporting agencies within the Whyalla community in regards to our city's COVID response, especially to this latest Omicron outbreak. So what we are looking at is planning and ongoing management moving forward. It's an evolving beast as such, but it's basically keeping all the agencies up to date and working together to support each other in the response to COVID. It's an extremely important group, and I think it's working very well together. Especially hearing from directly from the Director of Nursing from the Whyalla Hospital in regards to their planning and how they are managing obviously COVID within the city. And with all confidence, I feel very assured that it's being managed well from Whyalla's point of view. Obviously, we talked before about the having Whyalla as a hub for the testing. So we are going to, from a council's point of view, continue to advocate that Whyalla is named as a site as well, because we believe that with the size of our city and the population numbers that we have here, is that we should be seen as a testing hub as well. I think at the moment Port Augusta is, and we feel that Whyalla, obviously with the size of our city, needs to be included on that list. So we'll be advocating to the to SA Health and the state government from a council's point of view. Yeah. Anything else, Justin, you wanted to mention? Because
no, that's good. I think maybe just adding to that, through the local government functional support group, which is sort of the key agency liaison point between local government and the relevant state authorities, there has been some discussion about councils providing support in terms of facilities for distribution points or pickup points for the rapid antigen testing, and we're currently seeking further clarification regarding what the needs are in Whyalla, because collectively the members of the Whyalla leadership group, and I'm sure everyone online here would also recognise the need for and importance of having a centralised pickup facility for the rapid antigen testing in our city. We also are very mindful of our operations, both steelworks and mining within our city, and wanting to obviously not only ensure the ongoing service delivery of council services, but the potential impact on those critical industries is also minimised as well. And I don't know, Rick, if you wanted to make any comments at all in terms of Liberty One Steel and around COVID, or it's not necessary, but just I don't know if you wanted to just share with the councillors any updates.
What I can say, I guess, so far to try and relieve the pressure from the hospital and any other, and Puma at Port Augusta, that today we started a clinic for our own employees for mining and steel at the through Stella Health. So we have that open from 8 till 4 or 5 days a week, and from what I heard, every appointment was full today. So hopefully that'll help our business stay open for sure.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Is there any other general comments about COVID before we move on to looking at our COVID relief opportunities? If not, I'll hand back to you. Actually, I'll go straight to Grant.
Yep.
So Grant, if you can jump in to the conversation now, please.
Yep, thank you, Justin. Hi, councillors. So yeah, just wanted to give first a bit of a refresher on what we've council have provided previously from a COVID relief point of view earlier. A couple of years ago, over the last 2 years, and then just initiate a little bit of a discussion around what we might see, if anything, going forward. I've also got a little bit of an update on what other support is available from other levels of government. So previously, council, the measures they put in place was automatic waiving of all fines for late rate payments. So that was automatic, not on application. So we did that for a 12-month period, or for 4 quarters of rates, and that cost the council was approximately probably $50,000 over that year. We also deferred all new debt collection activity for that same 12-month period. We did a automatic waiving of community lease and license fees for a 6-month period, so sporting groups, those sorts of things that hold leases and licenses with council. So that was a cost of about $35,000 for over that 6 months. And we also allowed waiving of commercial lease fees held with council on application. There wasn't a lot or any, I think, applying for that. We provided pensioners with a one-off $30 rate rebate last financial year, with a cost of approximately $42,000 for that one. And then one of the big one that we had obviously was the providing a 50% rebate to businesses on application based on their eligibility for JobKeeper. So we did budget $600,000 for that. We only had 14 applicants across 21 properties, and that was a cost of $138,000, and 2/3 of that actually related to one assessment. So, and then just providing, so while we didn't have specific process different to normal for residential properties, our hardship policy does delegate power to the CEO to remit rates based on financial hardship on a case-by-case basis. And what that requires is a recommendation to come from a qualified financial counsellor, which ratepayers can access free of charge in Whyalla, and there are services outside of Whyalla as well. So this policy operates at all times, not just during COVID. Over the last 2 years, we've actually only had one applicant under that, and a remission was granted under that. But yeah, there's only been one in 2 years under the council's normal hardship policy. So that's this previous support provided. Currently, so just for information, support that's available from state and federal government. So individuals that either have COVID or are a close contact and need to quarantine can access a one-off payment up to $750 if they don't have any paid leave available. And also, so that's a federal government amount. And then in South Australia, if you're needing to quarantine just while you're waiting for a PCR test result and you have no paid leave available, then you can access a $300 one-off payment. And for businesses, so businesses in the tourism, hospitality and gym industries can access, and I've only covered businesses with turnover less than 10 million here. There is another one for those who have over, but can they receive $3,000 of relief automatically and can apply for an additional $3,000 if their turnover has been negatively impacted compared to last year by over 30%. So that covers a period just after around the New Year's when the extra restrictions are brought in place. Businesses in other industries than that can apply for up to $6,000, but their turnover has to have decreased by more than 50% over that same period. And major event organisers with events that were going to be over 1,000 people can access up to $25,000, where they have to show that they have actually incurred that loss. And that's for events between 27th of December and 27th of January. So I guess some points for discussion or thought. So with Council's hardship policy is designed to provide broad support in most circumstances. That was the purpose of Council adopting that a couple of years ago in an updated form. So is that sufficient in the current situation and malleable enough to provide support? I guess some of the points being targeted support previously was there was a very low rate of uptake. And I guess one of the issues people have had maybe with the hardship policy, this is the offsetting thing to that, is that it requires obviously a financial counsellor to give advice, and some people are turned off by that. But we do consider that obviously to be important because council staff are not in a position to assess individuals' financial circumstances, and we need that sort of extra layer there so that we get that surety. And also with the support being provided by other levels of government, what are the expectations on council to provide support? One area, I guess, in those things I outlined is there is a bit of an area of inequality between businesses in tourism, hospitality and the gym area, where they get funds automatically and they can apply for more if their turnover is impacted by 30%, whereas every other industry cannot get funds unless they have been impacted by 50%. So I guess if there was some thoughts around targeted relief, whether some of those other industries may be the first point of call. So that's the update and areas for discussion.
So I guess, members, we're sort of not looking for a decision or anything of that nature tonight, given this is a briefing. And looking to see whether or not you would like to see a report brought to the next council meeting with some options. Anybody have any comments? Thank you, Mayor.
Look, yes, I would like to see a report come to council. I think we do need to have some options for the community, and obviously, as you said, it is a similar situation to 2 years ago, but it also is different in some ways. So I think that a new report that offers options for support would be welcomed.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Simpson? Need to unmute.
Couldn't hit the button first time. I agree with the Mayor, but I also have to point out that I think during the last couple of years, the situation is worse because we're in a lockdown situation. Well, now we're just in a go quietly situation.
Councillor Stupos?
Drop mute, sorry.
Councillor Stupos, you're currently, that's
Sorry,
it.
yeah, thought I pressed it. Yeah, it is totally different to the last one. When you present the report to us, I'll be very, very curious to see where are the vulnerable industry or businesses in Whyalla. I mean, you've mentioned tourism, hospitality, and gyms, etc., who have suffered a 30% discount. The steelworks are trying to remain open. The local delicatessens and that are still trying to stay open. So I'd like the numbers between those other industries to see what the potential impact could be for us. And that's me done.
Thank you.
Is there any other councillors with any questions or comments about relief measures or more broadly sort of COVID related questions in terms of council service delivery? Councillor Knox?
Look, I think that this round of COVID is very much a mixed bag, isn't it? In terms of which businesses are impacted and which ones aren't. And I think, as Councillor Ross says, we need a report to look at that as well, because not all businesses have been impacted to a huge margin. They might have been a small impact, but there are others that have had huge impacts. I mean, if you're a hotel, for example, and you are down to 25% of your dining room, that makes it a bit difficult unless you do sittings. I guess you could do 2 or 3 sittings across the thing, but then again, how do you sanitise in between? So it's a really mixed bag, but I'm happy to look at a report.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall?
Yes, I agree with Councillor Knox. I think this is a really mixed bag, obviously being in the gym industry. There are things, dare I say, popping up on a day-by-day basis. Just had one while I was on mute and off screen before. So we really won't know the extent for a little bit longer. So I think we need to at least have a few options on the table as this spreads further and further through Whyalla. I think then we will actually have a bit of an understanding of who it has impacted. So we might as well be on the front foot and be proactive and come up with a few options.
Yep. Okay. We can certainly bring those options to next week's council meeting, and also I think over a period of time keep a watching brief as to how things evolve. Is going to be important over the coming months, because I don't think that we really truly understand that impact just yet. So we'll certainly bring a report to next week's council meeting. Thanks, Grant.
Okay, all right. Well, I think we've covered that item, unless, again, there's one last call out to councillors if there's any other COVID-related questions. If not, I'll move on then to the next item, which is around the airport airside works. This is a confidential item, so we will ask the community, anyone from the community or external parties to leave this meeting. Councillors are also going to leave this meeting and go into a separate meeting, but for the benefit of anyone from the public, this is the last item, and unlike a council meeting, we won't come back into an open forum at the conclusion of discussing this confidential item. So I'll ask councillors to now go into the separate confidential meeting and bid farewell to any external